Hello everyone, it's Miss Quids again. In today's video, which is a continuation of the LaTeX series that I began last year, today's video on LaTeX is going to be about figures and doing import graphics with figures and also how to work with text wrapping around figures. So when I was trying to come up with the kind of scope of this video, I thought there is plenty and plenty I can talk about with regards to figures, and there is really a lot more than I can go over in just this short video. So just to put it out there, this is not trying to be the definitive video on figures in LaTeX. We're going to start off with this basic document, which I've just got a begin and end document. I haven't got any packages here. It's just a completely clean slate, so we can start off trying to include an image. So the first thing I want to show you is just how do we include an image before we actually get into figures. So figures is kind of getting into floating elements in LaTeX, which we saw before when we looked at tables a couple of videos ago. So floats in LaTeX, when you use a float kind of environment, then LaTeX will put the floating object where it thinks it's appropriate for it to go. I'll start off just including an image without dealing with the figure environment, because you can just use the command to include an image without dealing with the figure environment at all. So in order to do that, we need to have a package called wrapfig. So I'm going to import that at the beginning. So there we have use package wrapfig, and then I've got the little blurb with the title and author, and then I'm going to include the image I want. And I should say the image that I'm going to include is this image of a cat. So I just downloaded this by searching for cats on Google Images and looking for ones that I could reuse freely. So we've got a fluffy cat here. Sorry if you don't like cats. So the command we use in LaTeX to include an image is called include graphics. Within the curly braces, we put the name of the image. This tex file is in the same folder as the cat image, so I will just give the name of the cat image. And this is the simplest thing we can do, include graphics cat.jpg. So I'm going to just quickly compile this, and I'll show you the first compile of this video. LaTeX images.tex. And we've got an error. So we're compiling to DVI, which is the default if you just use the LaTeX command. And it's having issues with images, basically. If you Google that, LaTeX error, then it's just issues with DVIs, basically, the DVI format. So instead I'm going to use PDF LaTeX, and now this has managed to compile okay. So now we'll open the PDF, and this is rather interesting. So on the first page we have our title and the author and the date, and we've got the whole image in its original size, which, as you can see, we're just getting just a corner of this image, which is not what we want. So now we need to think about scaling this. So the easiest way I can think of is you put square brackets after include graphics. And here you can put various size and other kind of parameters. So I can put scale equals, and then the amount we want to scale it by. So for example, if I do 0.5, it's going to scale it down by half. Let's have a check to see what that looks like. And this actually fits on the page. It's quite a large image, but it does fit. And now I mentioned looking at the figure environment, so making this a kind of floating object. So I will just wrap this in the figure environment very simply. Using the begin and end figure commands. And compiling this and reopening it, the figure has actually ended up, I mean, you can see it here, it's ended up on the second page. So for some reason, LaTeX seems to think it's a good idea to put it on the second page. I'm not quite sure why. So we can also scale this according to the text width. And in order to do that, we do width equals, for example, 0.4 / text width. So this is just multiplying text width by 0.4. And so it's 0.4, the text width. So the width of any kind of normal amount of text in this environment. And for some reason, LaTeX thinks it's a good idea to put it at the bottom now. Anyway, the final thing I'd like to go over is how to wrap text around figures. So we need a different environment in order to do this, and that environment is called wrapfig. Now, if you had installed TeX like I mentioned in the first video, then you probably don't have this package, wrapfig, installed. Now, I've managed to find a resource on the Stack Exchange website for Ask Ubuntu. And this top answer, this highest voted answer, kind of gives it away. So you need to install a separate package, TeX LaTeX Extra, and that will get you what you want. And once you've done that, you can just use package wrapfig. So what we can do is we can replace this figure with wrapfigure, and the same here. And then how do we actually tell it how to wrap? Here I have set up an example to work with the wrapfigure environment. So it's kind of hard to get your head around wrapfigure, I've noticed, in that, well, for one thing, I didn't actually use wrapfigure myself, to be honest. Other things I've done with figures that are a bit different include basically like having multiple images within a figure, but that is quite complex, so I was going to save that for another video. I've tried to come up with an example that makes some kind of sense. If you look at the documentation, it does say things like the actual graphics that this refers to should be smaller than the width of the actual figure itself. One thing I will say, do not make either of these just text width. Make sure you're actually multiplying it by something. So if we go with 0.5 for each, this is the result we get. It appears to be half and half. If we do 0.6 and 0.4, what we get is something a bit different. So it seems to have decreased the size of the whole thing, while also kind of just making it just smaller overall. Yeah, it's decreased the size of the whole thing is what I'm trying to say. And it doesn't really make too much sense to me, this environment, to be honest. I just wanted to include it as a basic way of doing stuff with text and things, including images or figures. In a future video, I do want to go over how we have multiple images per figure. So until then, I will see you all later. Thanks for watching.